Yeah. So what is emotional resilience? Emotional resilience is the ability to get back. Everybody has adversity of some kind, right? So emotional resilience is the ability to get back up from an experience of adversity with speed and agility and leverage the adversity somehow. So turn it into an advantage, turn it into a strength, turn it into not only, okay, I'm learning from this, but actually wrapping it up and running with it. Like, we catch balls and it's about, here's a ball. You just caught a moment of adversity. Take the ball and run and score a goal. That's the concept.
Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. If you've ever wondered if your mindset is affecting your ability to make these changes in your life around alcohol, your nutritional goals, or anything else that has you feeling maybe a little bit stuck, you have come to an incredible episode today. I have the privilege of speaking with Kim Ades of Frame of Mind Coaching. And Kim and I have a very powerful conversation where she shares some tools around journaling, prompts, mindset, and her own philosophy about empathy and emotional resilience that I think are really going to help you in a most powerful way to connect the dots. So I want to share a little bit about Kim, and then we're going to dive right in to this episode. So Kim is a leader of executives and the creator of Frame of Mind Coaching. Frame of Mind Coaching delivers an extensive coaching experience specifically designed to help executives, directors, and high potential leaders reach unprecedented goals through the process of building mental awareness, strength, stamina, and resilience. The Frame of Mind coaching process is built on the premise that thought precedes all action and that the mastery of thought is the key to extraordinary success. So if this sounds familiar, I think you're going to recognize that Kim and I talk a lot about some of the mindset hacks that I share that come out of my background from the This Naked Mind Institute. And we're going to do a little refresh on what it means to really think about your own frame of mind. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I can't wait to hear your feedback. Well, hey, everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. And today we're going to have a bit of a controversial conversation with the amazing Kim Ades of Frame of Mind Coaching. So, Kim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and to be having this conversation with you.
Well, I told Kim as we were hitting record that what I really wanted to do is expand our minds a little bit around this idea of empathy and emotional resilience and where leadership comes into living our real life. So, Kim, tell us a little bit about Frame of Mind Coaching and how it intersects with us as if we're not a coach, if we're not looking at this from a business standpoint. How do these principles help us live our life with more intention?
Well, okay. So the premise is this, is that from my perspective anyway, the way you think will have a profound impact on everything you hear, see, smell, taste, touch. So everything is filtered through your thinking and your beliefs. So the way you think will be reflected in your life, in your quality of your life, in your relationships, in your productivity, in your job, in your overall happiness. So at the end of the day, what we're really looking at, sure, we work with business owners and executives, et cetera. Yes, we do that. But what we're really doing, our mission is to help people live with greater ease, peace, exhilaration, fulfillment, and joy. And when that happens, they're able to reach their goals. They're able to not only reach their goals, but allow those things to occur or unfold with greater ease. They're not in a battle anymore. They're not struggling so much. And so when you say, like, what's the intersection? Your thinking is the foundation of your life. And if you're not happy with something in your life, typically what happens is we immediately reach to what should we do to change that thing. And my approach is our actions follow our thoughts. First we think, then we do. And normally when we try to change our actions without addressing the thinking, we get temporary change instead of fundamental change or sustainable change. So I don't know if that gives you a little bit of a framework, but that's where we're coming from.
I love that. And I think most of my listeners are going to be fairly familiar with this idea of we need to upgrade our belief system. We need to explore where those limiting beliefs are in order to create that lasting change.
Yeah.
So, yes, this is exciting because you're the expert. So I want you to help us go a little deeper. So, like, if we understand this premise that we need to explore these thoughts and these beliefs, what comes next?
Well, so there are lots of questions, right? The first question is, how do we find the beliefs that are getting in our way? What are the mechanisms that we can use to identify the fact that we even have a belief that might be slowing us down? So how do we do that? Well, we do it in a multitude of ways. If we're just people living on our own, not working with a coach, how do we do that? We notice when we're not feeling great. And by not feeling great, I mean emotionally great. When we're feeling down, when we're feeling frustrated, when we're feeling angry, when we're feeling disappointed in ourselves, when we're feeling guilt, when we're feeling any of those kinds of emotions, anxiety, any kind of emotion, that's an indicator that our thoughts are pointed away from what we want. That's an indicator that we are internally taking ourselves to that negative spot, that, let's just call it, not happy place. So that's just a signal. Okay, I'm not feeling well. Usually we attribute the not feeling happy to outside reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever those, oh, I didn't make a sale. My spouse said something, not so nice to me. The weather's bad. My stomach hurts, whatever it is, right? We attribute it to outside factors. And what we do with our clients is we say, okay, there are outside factors. It's true. They influence us. But what causes our negative emotion is the story we're telling about those outside factors. And that story is a function of the way we see things, a function of our beliefs, that screening mechanism we were talking about earlier. And so that's in your control. There are many things that are not in your control, but that is in your control. So one of the things we teach our clients to do is to reflect upon the story they're telling about everything, but most importantly about themselves.
Mm.
And so how do we get them to reveal their stories? Is part of our coaching process has them journaling every single day with their coach. So
Yes.
when they are journaling and they share their journal with their coach, like we have an online private and secure platform where they do that, when they share their journal with their coach reads and responds to their journal, asking more questions and literally identifying the beliefs and saying, hey, is this what you believe to be true?
Mm.
And is this belief taking you where you want to go? If not, let's look at that a little more closely.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that, because we do get stuck in those outside circumstances and we often feel like things are happening to us instead of for us. And so this shift of exploring what is my story and is it pointing me in the direction I want to go is powerful. We talk about in the This Naked Mind methodology where I trained, we talk about, the story that we tell ourselves is going to impact our journey. And we get to start asking, is it true? As you said there, Kim. And I think that's such a beautiful reminder that we can explore this through the lens of asking questions. And so that journal piece is something that I can see is really unique to have that back and forth feedback with a coach. What about people who are like, I don't know what to write, or I'm afraid of journaling, or I don't want to put down all my deepest thoughts? What's happening here?
Well, if you're going to work with your coach, you might as well put down your deepest thoughts, right? Like you might as well take advantage of the coaching. And if you're going to hold back, then you're not really getting all that you can be getting from the coaching experience. So, we'll leave that conversation aside. But for people who don't know what to journal, we always supply like how it works is when we work with our leaders, we always start off with a very, very intensive 10-week process. And there's a call once a week, but there's also journaling prompts.
Mm,
So every week has a different prompt that we give them that gets the ball rolling in terms of journaling. So, and the prompts are designed to take them through a very, very specific journey. And they are also designed for us to gather data so that we as coaches, and you understand this, is so that we are able to pick up patterns of beliefs, patterns of behavior, patterns of perspective, and how those patterns influence what they do and what they don't do, and how satisfied they are with the outcomes in their lives. And so the journaling, how I describe it from a coaching standpoint, when my client journals, I'm walking into the room and the light is on and I can see where everything is. And
mm,
so as a coach, I can help them very quickly. And I find in contrast without a journal, it's like walking into the room is pitch dark and I'm searching around for the lights. That's the difference for me as a coach. I find it's night and day. The journal allows me to see what's going on inside, how they're processing things. But also now they're sharing every single day, and that means that I'm getting a lot more information from them than just from coaching sessions or calls.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's really great. And I love that analogy of the dark room because sometimes I'll have clients say to me, well, I wasn't going to share this with you, but, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm the safe place. I'm the place where you do want to share because I get to help you uncover those blind spots. We get so caught up in our story, in our past, in our beliefs, in our circumstances that we need someone who can see beyond what we see. We have such a narrow vision when we're just in our own head. So, yeah, that's a great tool. So, what comes after the how to find the beliefs? What comes next?
So, very often when we show people these are the beliefs you have, and we ask them, does it align with what you want? They could very quickly and easily understand that there's a mismatch, that there's a lack of alignment. The question is, how do we create alignment? Well, we ask them to really probe into these beliefs. We ask them, are these beliefs true? And if they're not true, what belief can you take on that's called a trade up?
Mm,
And what I mean by that is, I'm not going to ask you to go from this belief to a totally radically different belief because that's hard for you to swallow. It's hard for you to, I like to use the word buy,
mhm,
right? But you can go from this belief to this belief and then that belief, right? Like we can move 1 inch at a time. And so I invite them to trade up for a more healthy, more positive, more a belief that takes them closer to their goal that they can buy.
mhm.
So we
Yes.
so we trade up one belief at a time. Slowly, slowly, slowly.
That's a great way to phrase it. I really like that. When I work with my alcohol-free clients or the ones that are working toward alcohol freedom or changing their beliefs around alcohol, we do this a lot, this exact process. But I think what you're saying, this trade up, is an even better way to help understand what this looks like. So we might have someone with the belief that alcohol reduces my anxiety. And so, first, we have to ask, is that true? And is that belief, using alcohol every time you feel anxious, creating the life that you want? And then the trade up would be alcohol is a tool I have been using for anxiety. Does that sort of follow that process?
That's exactly correct. That's
Yeah.
perfect. You've captured it really well and applied it like really accurately and very, very well.
Yeah. One of the things that we do find for people, because and this is true, I'm sure, of any facet of life. But when we think about alcohol, culture and society tells us things that people have then co opted as their own belief, such as, I need alcohol to have fun. And so when we allow that this is not their own belief and we start to explore and dig into that, we have to be careful not to expect, like, I don't need alcohol to have fun. Like you said, that's too big of a buy. The cost is too big, right? They don't believe that. So those baby steps, those incremental changes of thought really
It's so
do.
funny because I have a client right now who literally we're discussing alcohol. That's the topic of the day. He's like, haha, you think I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, no, I don't think you're an alcoholic, but I don't think you need it as a crutch. Right. Like
Yeah.
not that what I think matters, but why are you asking me? That's the real question. Like, how does this actually coincide with where you want to go and the life you want to live? So
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. And I'm sure with other beliefs that you deal with on a regular basis, people have taken their belief from their family of origin or their, you know, place in society, wherever their class, for example, can be really insidious. So
Yeah.
one belief that I find almost universal, Kim, and I wonder if this comes up in the work that you do and how you address it, is I am not enough.
Oh, that's a very common belief, but it's not always spoken in those terms,
Mhm.
right? Because that's a very plain, I'm not enough for what? They might say, well, I don't have as much drive as my brother. Or they might say, I'm okay earning a regular salary,
Ooh.
right? Or they might say, I'm not sure I'm cut out for that. Or they might say, this one event really stresses me out. And what they're really telling me is, I don't feel equipped to handle it.
Mhm.
Right. So they're telling it to me in different ways.
Yeah, that's really good because yes, like I said, I identified what I hear underneath, but you're right. People don't come up with those statements. And in the case of most of my audience, this connection to alcohol looks like I need alcohol to have fun.
Yeah.
Everyone in my social circle drinks,
Or
it's expected.
it's easier to date people when I have a one or two drinks, right?
Mhm.
I'm looser, I'm more easygoing, I'm more focused. I have ADD, but this way I can really, pay attention and be present.
Yeah. Or I can slow down, turn my brain off.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that was something for me. I heard a lot that, oh, you're too much, calm down, like slow down, your energy is too big. And alcohol helped me depress that a little bit. And so by holding on to that belief, I was also creating this dynamic where alcohol kept showing up.
Mm, yeah. I find it interesting. Also, there are certain industries where alcohol is very standard.
Yep.
They need to go out for drinks with their people, right? And I'm like, okay, but why? Why can't you just have a ginger ale? Right? Like,
Yes. And again, it is that underlying belief. And the question, is it really true? So you talk about this idea of emotional resilience. And I
yeah,
think for my audience, sometimes that feels like an elusive concept. Can you
yeah,
break that down for us?
yeah. So, what is emotional resilience? Emotional resilience is the ability to get back. Everybody has adversity of some kind, right? So, emotional resilience is the ability to get back up from an experience of adversity with speed and agility and leverage the adversity somehow. So turn it into an advantage, turn it into a strength, turn it into not only, okay, I'm learning from this, but actually wrapping it up and running with it. Like, we catch balls and it's about, here's a ball. You just caught a moment of adversity. Take the ball and run and score a goal.
Mhm.
That's the concept.
Ooh, I really like that. That's helpful. So, do you help people break it down? Because to me, I see like people, first of all, just allowing that this adverse thing is going to happen. And now it's in my lap. I've caught the ball and recognizing like what maybe the opportunity is. Is that kind of where you start?
Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to understand that, again, we're going back to the story that people are telling themselves about this adverse experience. So, what does it mean that this thing happened to you? What does it mean about you? What does it mean about them? What does it mean about, right? So, like a person could say, I'm getting divorced. Whenever somebody tells me I'm getting divorced or I got divorced, okay, let me back up. What's your usual response when somebody says, "Oh, I'm getting divorced"?
Mm. Tell me more. That's interesting. What's happening for you?
Yeah.
How are you
And
experiencing that?
yeah, so that's a beautiful response. But a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I don't. I say congratulations,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like great. Something that wasn't working has come to an end. It's not easy to go through divorce. I went through it myself, right? So it's not easy, but it's the beginning of a new life. It's the beginning of something new. And so first things first, are you seeing yourself as a victim? Are you feeling bad for yourself? Do you consider this a failure? Like, what is your perspective on this? Because your perspective will impact how you feel, but it'll also impact what happens moving forward.
Mhm.
So, when someone has a moment or an experience of adversity, I kind of want to start by taking that measurement of the assigned meaning of that event to the person. What are you making this mean? And and is that meaning contributing to a great future or is it actually really getting in your way?
Yeah.
So we want to address that first, right? So because we need to position people to be able to take that adversity and be okay with it. You can't run and score a goal if you're like, I want to drop this ball. I wish it never happened to me. Poor me, my fingers are burning, right? So we need to get them comfortable holding the ball. Okay, I got divorced. It's not the end of the world. Nothing, right? It's okay. I will live through it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's good. I love that. Congratulations. Something that wasn't working is ending. And with
Has
that
come to an
is
end.
such a
Yeah.
beautiful opportunity. I think that we talk a lot about letting go of alcohol as I'm not giving something up, I'm gaining
Yes.
something. And I think that is a way that we can frame those adverse circumstances as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. I love the way you see things. I think we're very aligned.
Mm. Yeah. Well, and I'm loving this conversation because I think my audience hears my perspective, but to hear new language and new frameworks around the same sort of basic concept
Yeah.
is really helpful because we all hear something one time and then it might resonate with us, or it might be the 10th time, or it might be the way Kim said it versus the way Terry said it that really sparks that new way of thinking.
Yes. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And I love the way you're applying this specifically to the idea of being sober. I really, really love what you're doing.
oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really fun to take this blend of life coaching and the alcohol freedom coaching because it really is like alcohol is really just a symptom of what's not working and where we are using buffering. I'm also trained as a functional nutritionist, so I see the same thing with people in food. And so, we find a lot of buffering behaviors when we have these stories, thoughts, limiting beliefs. And alcohol is something that, because it's also addictive, can really create a, a long detour from getting back to who we are.
And I'm just curious, and I know you're interviewing me, but can you please define buffering? Maybe I'd like to hear about it. Maybe your audience needs to hear about it again.
Yeah, well, and I think of it in terms of the coping that we do. And I always, kind of like you said, congratulations, you're getting divorced. I always say, like, coping is these behaviors that they served you for a while. They were like self-care. And so we can have these ways of buffering that are the best tools we have at the time.
God.
And they show up in terms of taking care of ourselves. Like, I couldn't handle this situation, and so I drank at it for a long time. And in that moment, in that time span, I think it's beautiful to acknowledge, like, hey, it's not about judgment. It's about, this is what I used and tried, and it worked for a while, and then it didn't work so well, and then it got in the way, and now I'm acknowledging, like, that behavior is keeping me from exploring what's really happening in my life.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I think of this as buffering.
Got it. So for a while it was soothing, for a while it was helpful, for a while it gave me a benefit. But now the cost is outweighing the benefit.
Yep.
I get it. Okay, very interesting.
Yes, yeah, and it really is, because we don't we have so many, again, cultural ideas of, if someone drinks too much, they have a disease, they have a genetic disposition, they have a rock bottom before they change. And all of that is really passe. Like, we can look at this journey to drinking and over drinking and then not drinking, perhaps, as a part of our experience of life. And I never hit a rock bottom. In fact, my own mother said, I don't know why you would stop drinking. You don't have a problem. I
Uh-huh.
said, well, it's a problem for me. It was no longer working for me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to detach from it. But a lot of times we get people from the outside thinking that there's a story about all of this. And I think it's so beautiful to have this conversation, Kim, and highlight, like, this is our whole life. We have stories, and we create meaning, and we soothe, and we detach around all kinds of things. And alcohol is just one part.
And food is another, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So,
Yeah. So after people get to this place where they are holding the ball, it's no longer burning their fingers, how do they run for the goal line?
so a lot of times when we have the ball, okay, we got the ball, we just start running. And unfortunately, many times we discover we're running towards the wrong net.
Mhm.
So once you have the ball and it doesn't burn and you're used to holding it and it doesn't hurt and it's like, okay, it's a little heavy, but it's not it's fine, it's comfortable. What we want to do is ask them, first of all, to situate themselves and figure out, where is the goal? Where's the net? And what we want them to do is turn themselves, sometimes literally, but mostly figuratively, towards the net. And then they can move towards the net. But, right, most important thing is, so many times people are pointing away from the net. And so we need to help them get comfortable with their situation, whatever their situation is, and then say, okay, what is it that you wanted? What was the goal in the first place? Let's turn you towards that goal. And let's start taking small steps to help you towards what it is that you want to achieve or experience or live or whatever.
Mm. Yeah, that's so good, because yeah, we think that these things are happening to us and coming at us, and so maybe we start to accept, but we don't move maybe beyond that. I think of the beautiful work of Byron Katie, who, I have to confess, she's way over my head, so I haven't done a deep dive into her philosophy, but her framework of loving what is. I always remind my clients, like, that's great, but let's start with accepting what is. Let's just start with knowing where we are. And I think that's part of what you're talking, Kim, maybe about the centering. Like, where am I in this situation?
Where am I? Where am I? And is where I am taking me to where I want to go? Is where I am. And if I stay here and I stay with this perspective and these beliefs and this point of view, does it take me to the life I want to be living? So I'll give you an example, and I'm using the divorce example, but I have a friend and she is so passionate and so energetic and so full of life, but she always says she's also a single divorced woman. She's like, I'm alone. I went by myself. I'm always alone, alone, alone. I'm like, stop. Right? Like that point of view doesn't get you the life you're looking for because you're having self pity over being alone. And your self pity doesn't line up with a life that is fulfilling and vibrant. Doesn't match.
Mhm. Yes, yes. And I think of what came to mind for me, Kim, in that situation too, is like lonely and alone are very different.
Yes.
And so what she's really lamenting is not being enjoying the experience as as a person, an individual. She is lamenting that this means something about being lonely or people might
Yeah.
see me as less than.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's all so much wrapped up in this concept for her.
Mhm.
But, what it boils down to is I don't want to be alone. It doesn't feel good to me. I
Yeah.
can be alone during the day, but I don't want to be alone at night. I don't want to be alone,
Mhm.
right? It's a problem for me. It's a source of pain. And so therefore, when I think of doing things and I think of doing them alone, I choose not to do them.
Mm. So, I have a question for you related to this because a lot of my clients will come out of the fog, or I like to say, take off those rose colored glasses, and they say, I don't know what I want. Alcohol was a part of everything I did. It was a part of every social interaction. It was a part of connecting with my partner. It was a part of work. It was a part of my identity. How do I figure out what I really want?
We start a process of observation. And what we do is we start to observe what feels good. What do we want more of? What do we want less of? What experience did you have today that was fun and fulfilling? What experience did you have today that maybe you could live without, you want less of? And so we start to accumulate the experiences that create a charge, energy.
I
And
love
we
about that is it's simple. It's
very
like,
simple.
yes, it's like, okay, I could do that.
Exactly. And when we start to create this, let's call it even a list of things that create energy, that create a charge, what we typically notice is a pattern in this list.
Mhm.
And then we say, here, I'm capturing the list for you. I'm reflecting for you what you are telling me. And it seems that a lot of where your energy comes from falls into this category. It sounds like you should spend more time doing this, perhaps teaching, perhaps working with dogs, perhaps traveling, perhaps, you know, wall climbing, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Again, I think the simplicity is really powerful there. So thank you for that framework, Kim. Yeah, it's really good for people to be able to say, like, I need to understand where I am feeling connected to my real life. What does bring that charge, that energy, that passion, perhaps? And I always think we have to be careful with the word purpose, like that's our only goal. I get frustrated sometimes. I'm like, I always talk to people about like, let's just get curious. And if that curiosity warrants more interest, then you can have more interest. And then maybe you create a passion, and maybe that passion becomes your purpose.
Have you heard of the expression, let's start with why? Let's start with your why. So I'm not a fan of that. I think your why and my why are pretty much the same. Your why, his why, her why. Our whys are the same. The reason we do anything is because we believe it's going to make us feel better.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in what's your why. I'm interested in what's your why not. What's getting in the way? What's stopping you? What's holding you up? Right? So in a way, you're saying the same thing. That purpose concept isn't the critical piece. It's what's even getting in the way from doing that exploration you're talking about. What's tripping you up? What's making you play smaller than you really can play?
Mhm. Yes, I agree 100%. Thank you. That's so good. That's so good. Why not? And also, I think about this concept of being a dabbler. You
Love it.
know, I think it's a beautiful concept. Let's try things and decide, is that for me? Is that not for me? It's a way to start that beautiful process that you said of what direction am I pointed? And is that really the direction I want to travel in? Is that really going to be the thing that sparks that energy? And so I'm doing work now, personal work and just sort of exploring. I'm dabbling in midlife. And I think so many of these things interplay. The stories we have about aging. As a nutritionist, people talk about lifespan, and we need to start talking more about health span. We're starting to have those conversations. And I think we carry so much weight about what's going to happen in the future. We worry, we ruminate, we regret. And that's not where our charge comes from.
You're right. It's exhausting.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So there's one more question I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about. And to me, it is this idea about empathy. And why is empathy not always maybe the main thing? Like we hear a lot about it in the world today. And I
Yeah.
have to tell you that, and this might be a story I'm telling myself, you can tell me, Kim. But for me, I do not consider myself an empath naturally. I think I have compassion. I think I'm growing in these areas of understanding more of people's insides, but I'm not somebody that takes on so much energy that I wilt.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think that the world believes that being empathetic is a strength.
Mm.
It's what is necessary in the world for peace and harmony and all this. If we were only all more empathetic. But what people don't understand, first of all, is what is the definition of empathy? Empathy is it's not an intellectual activity. It's an emotional activity. It's taking on the emotions of someone else and feeling them as though they were your own. So I like to use this analogy. Imagine that you're walking by and you see someone drowning in a pool. How is that drowning person feeling? What is their emotional state? What do you think?
They're panicked.
They're panicked, they're breathless, they're scared, maybe even have terror.
Mhm.
And so if you were to have empathy, you would also feel scared, panicked, terror, breathless. And the moment that you have empathy is the moment that you are unable to help them. So it's like you've jumped in the pool and started drowning right alongside them.
Mhm.
So I can walk by and notice someone drowning in the pool. That doesn't mean I need to keep walking, right? I see someone drowning in a pool. I say they need help and I need to have compassion, right? And I also need to have strength. And my strength needs to come from believing that they can be safely out of the pool. And it needs to come from believing that I can have the muscle to lean in and pull them out. But if I suddenly have empathy, game over for both of us.
Mhm.
So empathy is a misplaced concept. It's a misplaced emotion. It doesn't help you and it doesn't help them. It has no use here.
Mm.
And so we often think that people should be more empathetic. I don't necessarily think that that's the formula for success in life or success in relationships. Do we need to take time to understand one another? Yes. Do we need to take time to ask more questions? Yes. Do we need to have more compassion? Yes. But I think empathy can be very problematic, especially I coach leaders for leaders and entrepreneurs who are trying to grow their businesses.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear you say that because it validates me personally, like, oh, I'm not just this closed off, cold individual. I don't feel like that, but we've put in a lot of emphasis on empathy lately. And I think where I have always said, it's much like you, Kim, as I start to understand this concept more, that compassion is really where I stand. And again, I would use the same thing. If someone's down in a hole and I get down in the hole with them, it doesn't, we're both down in the hole.
Exactly.
And there can be a time to come alongside someone and say, I want to just be here with you and acknowledge where you are. But there's also the opportunity to say, hey, I'm out of the hole. Let me help you up. Are you ready to
Right.
come into the hole?
Yes.
And that to me is one of my strengths is that, and so by not identifying as an empath, I think that it allows me to have a a differential between, I don't have to, I don't take on all of that. Like you said, it's emotion. It's an emotional exercise.
I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah.
As a child, I had a very high level of empathy and I had stomach aches all the time. It caused me a great deal of anxiety. I would hear a child cry and I was like, I was super upset. Right. And so I learned that um, I don't need to associate that way. And it's not particularly useful. It doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve anybody else.
Yeah,
And
this is the controversial part we're talking about, and I love it, Kim, because it's good to question these things that we hear or we someone says to us, and it sounds good, but then it's not working in our life. And so you find out more, ask those questions,
yeah,
get curious, see what the definition of empathy really is. So I'm curious if you were someone who had a great deal of empathy and would relate to people in a way that felt unhealthy. How did you work through that to this place you are now?
I mean, I literally used to get physically ill. You know, so it wasn't very helpful for me. I did a lot of work. I received a lot of coaching. I read a lot. I did a lot of my own journaling. I went through my own adversity. So, as you age, you kind of grow a bit of a thicker skin. But in my case, I think the adversity of my life, and I've had a few significant moments of adversity, I think made me really learn. It made me, I always, not only did I have empathy, I was a person who always wanted to move towards a place of a peaceful inside,
Mm.
feeling that sense of like, I'm okay. Now, things aren't perfect in the world, but I'm okay. And for me, that was the greatest driver. So I put in the work. I hired the coaches. I went to the conferences to learn all the stuff. I spoke to people. I read books. I interviewed people on podcasts. I did the work. And so, you know, can you build your emotional resilience? So that's the contrast, right? Emotional resilience is the contrast of high levels of empathy, high levels of feeling like a victim. So, can you learn to build your emotional resilience? The answer is absolutely. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's a great reminder that we have to put in the work to make the change. We don't just have a new concept and things happen. And this is where, the tools, journaling, getting good coaching, being in a place where we're open to learning, having that desire to learn what direction we're focused in. All of that is so, so helpful. So, you mentioned the tool of journaling. What other are kind of a couple of your go to tools, Kim, for people that are doing this work?
Yeah. So for us, journaling is a centerpiece of what we do. And then it becomes what exercises are we giving them in the journaling process. So I'm happy to give your audience a few exercises if you want.
I
And
would
they
love
can
that.
they
Yeah.
can send them to you or to me if you want. to work with. But the first exercise is, and if you guys are listening, grab a piece of paper and a pen and write it down. The first question is, what do you really, really want? More than anything, what do you really, really want? And there are two reallys there for a reason. Think about what you truly, deeply want, not what someone else wants for you, not what is expected of you, not what you think you should want, but think about what your heart truly desires. Write that down. And then the next question is, ask yourself, so what's stopping me from having what I really, really want right now? And write all the reasons. And what I'm going to start by saying is those reasons are a reflection of your beliefs. So that's your first exercise. And again, if you want, send it to Terry, send it to me. We're both very well equipped to work with it. But that's exercise number one. I'm going to give you a second exercise. And this one is a little bit of let's call it a bonus exercise, a little bit of my secret sauce. Okay. People start to work with me, and at about week, I don't know, 9-ish, I give them one particular exercise, and it's called create or write an ideal conversation. They can pick anyone they want, someone alive, someone who passed away, someone famous, someone they don't know, someone they had a fight with in the past. Doesn't really matter. A childhood friend, a fictitious lover. It doesn't really matter. Pick someone and write an ideal conversation with that person. Literally like a script. It doesn't have to be super long. And, write it out as though it's like the most perfect conversation you could ever have with someone. And send it to Terry. Again, send it to me if you want. But what you will see is that your brain tricks you. Your brain doesn't actually permit you to live in the world of ideal. Your brain creates limitations, even if you've done all the work. It's remarkable. And it's not easy for you to see the limitations you're still imposing upon yourself. But I mean, I've worked with literally hundreds of people, and in 99% of the cases, people have very deep-seated limitations.
Yes. And we often think the training that I did, we kind of talk about the level of belief and the level of thought. And so a thought is one, you can kind of turn around your thought. You can notice that, oh, I'm thinking that way. What's creating that? It might be something that we can turn around and explore with more ease. But those deep-seated beliefs are what probably come through that ideal conversation.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
good one. Yeah. And again, they're not going to see their own blind spots. They'll probably write that ideal conversation and say, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a woman who wrote an ideal conversation. It was many, many years ago. And her ideal conversation was between herself and the Obama administration because she wanted to be Secretary of State. And so she wrote this whole interview. And at the end of the interview, they said, wow, you're an amazing candidate. You're super impressive. And as soon as we've interviewed all the candidates, we'll let you know how it goes. And she wrote me a note and she said, how's that for dreaming big? And I'm like, yeah, dreaming big. You didn't even give yourself the job.
I know. That's what I was going to say. Oh my goodness. She talked herself out of it. Like there's people way more qualified. Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Ideal. Like, right? Blank slate, create whatever you want. But we we unconsciously impose limitations on ourselves. And the only way we can address them is by making them unconscious, by bringing them to the consciousness.
Yep. Yes. That liminal thinking is so good. Oh, I love this conversation, Kim. It's so fun to explore this and really to help those who are listening in just to expand on this idea of how we get stuck and where we can create, as you said, not temporary change, but lasting change that actually leads to a place where we feel more of that ease, peace, that resilience, that beauty, and ultimately, I think joy.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I feel like we're very much on the same page.
Yeah, it's so fun to have this conversation.
Yeah,
I love
really
it.
fun.
Tell us where people can connect with you, find out more about the work that you do.
Yeah, best place to go is frameofmindcoaching.com, or you can look me up. It's Kim Ades, Ades. I'm all over the place. And happy to have a conversation. Sign up for a complimentary coaching call. I'll be on the other end of that call. Maybe we have a team of people. So, but reach out, learn about us, ask questions. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for that invitation. It's been so fun to have this conversation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.